Did you miss me? That's right. The Philip Duff Show is back after what professional recording artists tell me is called a hiatus. But what I'm going to call is me being a lazy piece of shit. I was very busy as well, but I promise I'm going to knuckle down and bring this out on more of a regular basis in 2023, because it is 2023, and I've been away for so long. I thought I would come back with a bumper, double wide, extra long, supersized review of 2022. We're almost at the end of January 2023, so everyone else has very conveniently done their roundups of the year and lists and stuff, which I can rip off. And we can look at what went on in the world, what went on in bars and cocktails and the spirits business, and most importantly, what happened with me. So, I know everyone's got a podcast, so I want to thank everybody for listening along. Remember, if you look for the Philip Duff Show on YouTube, you'll see a mix of seminars that I've done, podcasts where there's visuals like video or PowerPoints as well, or just me shooting the shit with some people. You can also listen on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere you get your podcasts. And yeah, like, subscribe, I don't know, leave comments, anything. Eventually, I'm going to work out a way where I can actually make money by doing this shit. And then I'll be able to do like lots more of it until I get the Chat GPT chatbot to be able to do this. And then I can just sit in the pub, which I think we can all agree would be a better outcome for everybody. So I hope you had a great 2022 and a great end to 2022 in the festive season. I did not. Because me and my wife got fucking sick as dogs. We had such a great Christmas plan. Because normally, we have the kid Christmas Eve, and we have Christmas morning with her, and it's great. You unwrap the presents, all that shit, and then her dad picks her up, and we then welcome a load of people round for an unwise amount of cocktails and massive Christmas lunch. And then sometimes we stay in and keep going. Sometimes we tip out into Manhattan, nip around some of the bars. And this year we had decided not to do that. We're like, fuck it. We deserve a year off where Elaine, my beautiful lady wife, does not have to pretend to be able to cook a turkey. And I don't have to be able to pretend to cut one either. And we said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to do all that up until lunchtime. And then we are going to go and have a blowout lunch at Del Frisco's. Because Del Frisco's is kind of ignored by a lot of New Yorkers. It's a very nice steakhouse down in the theater district. You know, we were going to go there. We've done it before. You know, I'll have a dirty martini. She'll have a cosmopolitan. I'll have a tomahawk steak. And you know what? Cynical as we are, it's brilliant. And afterwards, we had a reservation. Thank you, Marissa. At Bemelman's Bar, which is the best place in New York to spend $34 on a martini. It's extra magical at Christmas. And on Christmas Eve, we both got sick as dogs. Spent most of Christmas Day and Boxing Day in beds. I was kind of back on my feet by the 27th or 28th or so. And Elaine got back on track by New Year's Eve. But yeah, just as well, we hadn't invited a load of people around. Our Christmas and New Year's makes us thankful for all the years when we weren't fucking sick. All right, off to the races, everybody. What happened in January 2022? Well, apparently nothing happened in the world. In bars and cocktails, it is then, and it is now, Dry January. And every self-righteous prick in the world loves to send you, if you're doing Dry January, texts and emails and screenshots and whatnot about all these scientific reviews of how it isn't actually better for you, and it'd be better just to not drink quite as much for the rest of the year, and all this kind of thing. And now you've got all the non-alcoholic spirits. You can't see me, but I'm doing that thing with my fingers where it's supposed to be like quotation marks. Non-alcoholic spirits and all the non-alcoholic beers and wines and kombuchas and all this stuff. And they're like, hey, it's Dry January. Hey, you know what? Maybe we'll buy you a load of like free non-alc drinks in bars with this voucher or this app. They did that in the UK and they called it, are you ready? Try January. Oh my God. Everybody must have just come right over the boardroom table when that was pitched by a PR agency about 6 or 7 months ago. Okay, I get it. It is nice. And I do dry January. I'm doing it right now, except for now. I'm actually drinking a large glass of whiskey. But generally, I do it, and it resets you for the rest of the year. It makes it easier to turn down that first drink, or that second drink, or that sixth drink for the rest of the year. And, like, there's no harm in it. It really, doesn't do anything wrong. And I will tell you from experience, I've been doing it for 5 or 6 years now. After you haven't had a drop to drink for about a week, you could never drink again. You could really never drink again. You just got to avoid the triggers. So usually for the first 7 or 10 days, I don't even go into bars. And after that, it seems so normal. And I tend to have a big blowout after my annual physical on February the 1st every year. And sometimes I find myself reaching for that drink. And even then I'm thinking, do I really want this? But then I remember, yeah, I do. So dry January this year. So many more non-alc brands than even a year ago. I'm going to talk about it a little bit later in this. There's quite a lot of criticism has been leveled at them. There's good ones, there's bad ones, there's downright shite ones. Generally, the beer world has its shit together a lot better. There are stunning non-alcoholic beers out there. My favourites are the ones made by the upstate New York brewery Athletic Brewing. We're looking for sponsors, by the way, if anyone's listening to this. Athletic Brewing, for all your non-alcoholic beer needs. I'm even a member of their Athletic Brewing Club, so every 4 weeks they just send me a load of beer, which is a pretty sweet deal. One thing that started happening in January last year and has continued throughout the year is that either cities have removed all those outdoor dining sheds that some people call parklets, or the bars and restaurants are removing them themselves. It's a wide range of things that have been done here. Everyone built a parklet. Speakeasy or semi-speakeasy bars like Attaboy, the former Milk and Honey in New York, built an outdoor area. There's a gay nightclub called the Toolbox near where I live here in New York, which is always very secretive. They had a closed door, perfectly lovely inside. Everyone was sweet as hell. But they actually built an outdoor area. Michelin restaurants built outdoor areas. Dive bars built outdoor areas. And you only get out of them really what you put in. There's one fairly divey bar I know, and their outdoor area looks like an alfresco meth clinic. Like, everyone in that bar has made bad decisions for their whole lives, and they're all holding each other's hands as they circle the drain. And now they're sitting outside in like plastic chairs from Home Depot. And then at the top end of the market, you've got your Dantes and whatnot, and they're beautiful and they're amazing and all that kind of thing. But a lot of people got it, used it, then neglected it. Everyone started, homeless people would be shitting in them, rats would be living in them, because at first people started building them with a wooden floor, right? Which makes sense. But what's under the wooden floor? Just a space. What comes in that space? Rats. What do rats eat? All the fucking food that people drop on the floor. And they, New York Times actually interviewed a famous outdoor area builder, and he said, yeah, no, after a while we learned to build them straight on the street. So the parklets are disappearing. There's actually a dude in New York who biked around for all of 2021 and 2022 and took photos of all of them, and he self-published 3 books of photos of all the parklets of Manhattan. They're really, really good. You can get them at the Whitney Museum, which is here in New York, or you could just Google guy who took photos of outdoors. That's how I found it. They're really cheap. The books are beautiful, actually. It's only like $10 each. And a sad thing happened in January last year. The bar Boilermaker on First and First here in New York closed, part of the Cocktail Kingdom empire. I always loved that place. They had excellent chicken wings and an excellent burger. And after a bit of a rocky start, it became a bit of a stalwart. It still hasn't reopened, as far as I know, but it is going to reopen, I've been told. So, let's see. Ooh, yeah, spirits business. Controversy. There is a mega brewery, perhaps you haven't heard of it in America, but it's mega everywhere else, called Brewdog. Brewdog started, 10 years ago, and it was these 2 young, tattooed, hip dudes, and they're like, yeah, fuck all these big breweries, we're gonna do it right, we're rebels, yeah! Stop me if this sounds familiar. And they made, really good, funny beer names, good beer, they contract brewed at first, but they're now like, the biggest brewery in England. They're now $1 billion a multi-billion-dollar company. So the whole, yeah, we're rebellious punks thing doesn't really wash anymore. Like, when you're getting on a private jet, you're no longer a punk. You're not rebelling against anyone, except, maybe rebelling against having to fly commercial. So, anyway, there was this documentary on the BBC about one of the founders of Brewdog. And it was that he had been bad, basically. And what it said was that he had sexually harassed the staff. And then there was a lot of other complaints as well. It tends to lead with the big one, and then it goes down the line. Like, one employee of they have several brew bars in the USA who said, yeah, he would take attractive female visitors on like tours of the premises. It's like, yeah, bastard. But yeah, this was a huge thing, and it affected their share price and all this. And what has emerged since then, interestingly enough, is that the guy himself said that he was actually being blackmailed. That after the documentary came out, a woman contacted him who said that she knew some of the women who were accusing him, and that she could kind of make it go away, or get them to retract their claims, or maybe pay a settlement. And he was at his wit's end, so he paid something like £400,000. And then it turned out that she was actually one of the ones who had been whipping up the campaign. She was both poacher and gamekeeper. And this guy, founder of Brewdog, has said that he will write a book about it and donate a lot of money to stuff like that. So the story continues. It's really, really interesting. I am soon, just coming back to the non-alcoholic thing, going to be doing an online kind of talk, debate, fight, slapdown with the one and only, the legendary David Gluckman. If you don't know who David Gluckman is, he is the ideas man who came up with the idea for Bailey's, for Ciroc, for the Singleton, for Tanqueray 10, and a host of other products. You can find his memoirs in the book That Shit Will Never Sell. The best thing to do is buy it as a ebook on Amazon, because the electronic version comes with all these links to old ads and songs and videos and whatnot to illustrate all the points that he made. He is an utter legend, and I'm here to tell you he does not like these non-alcoholic spirits. He doesn't like them one little bit. So we're going to have a bit of an online discussion, talk. For a change, I'm going to be the good guy here saying, they're not so bad, David. And he's going to be talking about why he thinks they're rubbish and what he thinks would be good alternatives to non-alcoholic spirits. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Hopefully it'll happen sometime this year or before I die. I got over to Amsterdam in January last year, just doing a bit of business here and there. Wife and kid came over. It was definitely weird. They changed the closing times. So by the time my family got over to Amsterdam and got to the apartment that I'd rented, everything closed at 8 p.m. And I'm like, oh, that's all right, What are we going to do? We're not going to go out and have wild nights. We had a lovely apartment. So, we'd get takeaways or go to a restaurant. The restaurant closed at 8 p.m. But then I had a few more days left in Holland because something had been cancelled. Like, the family went back to New York, and as soon as they left, almost, the Dutch government said, you know what, 8 p.m.'s too late. We're going to close at 5. I don't know if you've ever been in an entire country where all the bars have to close at 5 p.m., but I'm going to tell you it's a little weird having last call at 4:45 p.m. and stumbling, somewhat under the influence, out onto the pavement at 5 minutes past 5, when the only thing left to do in town is go to the supermarket and buy a few cans of beer and a few sandwiches, go home and watch Netflix on your laptop. So I did that. It was a lot more fun than you might imagine, and I went down to my old stomping grounds of Rotterdam for a few days. So that was a lot of fun. So February rolled in, and unfortunately the tanks rolled into Ukraine, which we all now know is Ukraine and not the Ukraine. This was a real slap in the face. Only a couple of weeks before, somebody had asked me, because of my vast knowledge of Ukraine and Russia, if I thought Putin would invade. And I said, of course not. He's not stupid, Putin. He's a dick, but he's not stupid. There's no way. That would be a bridge too far. And then I opened the news one day and I was like, oh. So here's my background. I've been going to Russia for over 20 years now, for speaking at various bar shows, doing work. I've taught the Diageo World Class Tour, which is you do lectures in 11 cities in like 13 days, everywhere from Novosibirsk to Nizhny Novgorod. And it's the most amazing experience. You really get to see all of this country. In fact, 10 or 11 years ago, when me and Mrs. Duff became Mr. and Mrs. Duff, we actually had half our honeymoon in Moscow because we'd both been booked for Moscow Bar Show, and we spent a few days in the countryside at a great place called the Wolverton Inn, because it's got sheep, wool sheep. And then we jet off to Moscow because we were speaking at Moscow Bar Show, and our hosts called us. This is very funny and a bit ironic in light of the invasion of Ukraine. They called us and said on the way in, it's like, yeah, the way we said you're staying at the Sheraton? We were literally in the car from the airport. We're like, yeah. They're like, we're not staying there anymore. We've put you in the Hotel Ukraina, the Ukraine hotel. And we were like, oh, Sheratons are nice. And we got there. The Hotel Ukraina is the most luxurious hotel in Moscow. It's incredible. Under the Soviet times, it was where they put all the foreign leaders, so all the rooms probably have microphones in them. But to give you, how fancy is it? It had a Rolls-Royce dealership on the ground floor. It was amazing. Really great. So, the Russian invasion of Ukraine has had long-lasting ramifications for our whole industry right up until today. We are now almost 1 year further for a war that some of us thought would be 3 months, then 6 months, then 9 months. We're into the second winter, and it is a horrendous slap in the face for the international community, untold suffering for people in Ukraine and Russia too, because as you might imagine, I got loads of friends in both countries. Nobody wants this war. Rich people in Russia don't want it. Poor people in Russia don't want it. Middle class people in Russia don't want it. And you know who really doesn't want it in Russia is men, because they are literally snatching men off the streets in Russia, I think still as we speak. And a week later, you could have been a grill man in a restaurant or a network IT administrator. Then you're holding a rifle somewhere in the middle of nowhere in Ukraine. I know a lot of guys who have just left. They've run away to places like Turkey and Montenegro and Cyprus and whatever. And God help them, they don't agree with the regime either. You will have seen in all the award shows that they're not selecting Russian bars, Russian restaurants at various bar shows. Russian brands aren't exhibiting. And this has led to quite a few interesting situations, such as the brand Stolichnaya, which is owned by Yuri Shefler, who has been arguing with the Russian state for over 20 years. The vodka isn't made there. He doesn't live there. He has been at constant war with Russia for over 20 years. And people still boycott Stoli because it's Russian. And here in New York, the vast majority of Russian businesses, or businesses that call themselves Russian, like bars and restaurants, especially in areas like Brighton Beach, aren't Russian at all. They're Ukrainian. But they got to America and they're like, who the fuck knows Ukraine? So they call themselves Russia, and they're being boycotted too. The stupidity never ends. It is horrendous for everyone in Kiev. I've been speaking at the Kiev Bar Show for the last 4 or 5 years. It's called Barometer. And I'm not just saying this because of the war. It is probably the best bar show in the entire world. The seminar stage is in a room, an amphitheater, for 2,000 people. I remember standing there with Nico De Soto, and he said, fuck. Yeah, you can do all the push-ups you like, Nico. It's still a room of 2,000 people. And the bar show is just about the best bar show in the world. You don't see a bit of plastic from start to finish. It's all beautiful crystal glassware. You pay for everything you taste, but it's all perfect. There's all these little stands where you can charge up the payment card. The food is beautiful. I mean, Barometer is the absolute fucking shit. And obviously it's been put on hold because everybody is at war. And the Ukrainians are a tough people, so we wish them all the very best. The nice young lady who used to book my flights for the bar show took her kid to a safe country, left the kid with somebody, I hope it was a family member, and herself went back to Kiev to fight. That's how tough the Ukrainians are. So obviously, Slava Ukraina, and let's hope this terrible war ends as soon as possible. What happened otherwise in February? Acquisitions wise, Heaven Hill bought Samson and Surrey. So Heaven Hill, family owned. Is it the Shapiro family? American drinks company, very famous for all its whiskey, bought Samson and Surrey, which is founded by some old drinks industry execs, including Robert Furness Rowe of Bacardi. And it was sort of like somewhere between being an incubator and a mini drinks company. They built a portfolio. They bought brands, but then part of the purchase price was the brands bought into Samson and Surrey, if you see what I mean. And you will have known them because in the portfolio was Ocho Tequila, Few Spirits, Mezcal Vago, absolutely amazing mezcal. Now you have to say mezcal from Mexico. No, you don't. All mezcals from Mexico. And a lot of the teams have kind of quietly left. The brands are kind of doing their thing. And no one really knows how Samson and Surrey have integrated into Heaven Hill yet. We wish them well. Pinnacle Guide started making noise then. This is another award, because that's what we need. We need more awards for bars. This one was launched by Dan Duff, a guy from the UK bar industry, did an awful lot of kind of event management and production for big companies like Diageo, founded his own sort of talent agency, global bar management, something like that. And what they do is they go to all the big names, the Alec Tratenas, the Eric Lawrences, and they're like, look, we'll be your agent, just like in Hollywood, right? We'll get you the gigs, we'll get you paid, we'll send the invoices, we'll pay you, we'll take our cut, bum, 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 bum. Together with Siobhan Payne and Hannah Sharman Cox, who are also refugees of the hospitality industry and the PR industry in London. Very, very 5-star backgrounds, and latterly started London Cocktail Week, which ain't nothing, right? And the Pinnacle Guide is a system of pins, pinnacle pins, for bars all around the world. And they've been, since throughout the year, they're like, we're going to do consultations with everybody. And they had a lot of Zooms and stuff. And I mean, in theory, you could ask a question. The guide hasn't launched yet. And we'll be interested to see, can they answer the eternal question? It's going to come up again and again and again, by the way, in this episode. If every judge is unpaid, what's in it for them? Or, to quote old Niccolo Machiavelli, chi bene. Now, in February, I also got on a aeroplane, and I nipped over to London for a few different reasons. And while I was there, I judged the IWSC, the International Wine and Spirits Competition. It was my first time judging it, and my day did not start well. I knew flying to London, I was flying overnight, I'd arrive on like a Monday morning. I knew A, it was going to piss rain, and B, there was a transport strike, right? Everybody was going slow. The tube, the underground subway in London, basically wasn't running. So I got in from the airport okay. It's still pissing. Got to my hotel, dropped my shit. And then I've got to somehow get in from there to central London. I was getting buses. I was going into McDonald's to use I arrived drenched, sweaty, annoyed, a little late. And then I settled into it. Doing a lot of judging, whiskey, vodka, extremely professionally organised competition, great groups of people that I judged with. I mean, it was massive. It was 3 or 4 floors. There would be other people judging there that you knew, and you wouldn't see them all week, except if you bumped into them in the very dodgy Dutch-Belgian pub Dehems in London's Chinatown, where we all went after a hard day judging to drink some more spirits. So, if you are a brand owner considering entering a competition, I would say the IWSC is well worth the entry fee. It is very well organised. There's no favoritism. There's no way you could possibly know what you're tasting. And the judges, including me, are of a very high quality. So, on to March. Now, in the world, I don't know if a lot happened, but everyone just talked about the slap in March. You remember that? Will Smith slapping the fuck out of Chris Rock at the Oscars. Apparently, hosting the Oscars is now viewed as being a bit of a poison chalice. Because the first thing that happens when you accept the gig and, you know, $500,000 or $1 million or however much they pay, is that a load of trolls, who are also unpaid incidentally, just start going through anything you've ever said back to when you were 12, every tweet, every comment, everything, and then you just don't want to do it anymore. So Chris Rock apparently jumped on the grenade, took it, made a joke about Will Smith's wife. She's, you know, an actress. He's a comedian. And Will Smith, God bless him, got up there and gave Chris Rock quite a slap. And I remember watching it because I had seen Will Smith in the movie Ali, about Muhammad Ali. And I used to box, actually. Not like Muhammad Ali. But I knew that when he trained, he really trained. And he really became a more than decent boxer, old Will Smith. So when I saw the slap, I actually thought it was fake. I thought, dude, you could have put your shoulder into it, you could put your hip into it, you know? But it turns out it was real. And it had repercussions throughout the year. Later in the year, a self-confessed clout-chasing lunatic ran on stage when the comedian Dave Chappelle was doing a thing somewhere in America and had what looked like a gun but was actually a knife. As Chappelle himself later said, it was a gun that identified as a knife. And tried to stab him. Like, legitimately, seriously tried to stab a comedian on stage. And what was it? At the end of the year, a lunatic who hadn't even read the Satanic Verses, the most controversial book that the author Salman Rushdie ever wrote. He ran at Salman Rushdie at an event in upstate New York. Salman Rushdie, famous writer. And stabbed him in the arm and I think the eye. And the latest news is that Salman Rushdie has lost a vision in that eye. And you can't help thinking, if this is an escalating thing, what's going to happen? Are bartenders going to get punched as well if they wear a particular badge or don't stock a particular brand? You laugh about it, right? We laugh about that here now. But it's interesting to look at where things might be going. So, in happier news, a fantastic bar called Lullaby opened in New York in March. It is in the space of the old Nightcap bar, spearheaded by no one other than very talented New York bartender Natasha David. Nightcap is no more. COVID certainly didn't help. And these new guys, Boston dudes, shout out to Jake and Harrison and the dearly beloved and much missed Brother Cleve, were so cool coming to New York. They came humbly, they came to understand and learn. And they called their bar Lullaby because it previously was called Nightcap. I mean, how fucking thoughtful is that? If you're old and from New York, this is the space that before that was called 151. And if you want to know what it's called before that, I don't know. I wasn't living here. Give me a break. I nipped out to San Francisco in March as well. I did not leave my heart there because San Francisco is a place that I really love, and it's a place that kept the flame alive for cocktails when nobody gave a shit about cocktails. I remember traveling to New York in those early days, like before about 2000, 2005. And like, you go to New York and it was all like neon blue martinis and stuff like that. San Francisco, you could get a martini, you could get a Negroni. But I did not leave my heart in San Francisco because San Francisco is now a bit of a shithole. It had already been hollowed out by all the tech companies allowing, 22-year-olds to earn $300,000 a year. So they just live in these beautiful $4 million townhouses. They get the Google bus in and out of work. They order takeout. They go to the Michelin restaurants. The staff can't afford to live within 4 hours of San Francisco. But what has unfortunately happened to San Fran and also LA is that those are also great places to live if you're homeless. Because if you have to be homeless in America, it's nice to be homeless where it's warm. So those two cities get an unfair amount of the homeless people there, right? It's not their own homeless people. It's people coming from all over America, to the extent where I've never felt scared in San Francisco until this time. It was bohemian before. It's dystopian now. It's like Mad Max. There's people shitting in the street. There's like lots of syringes, whereas before you'd see like 1 or 2 syringes. I happen to know a very famous bar owner who's also like 6'4", and he's like, can't take it anymore, I'm leaving. And he left. He has actually left San Fran. I was out there judging another excellent spirits competition, the American Distilling Institute Craft Spirits Awards. I cannot speak highly enough of it. I was on the weird panel this year, which means we got all the stuff that didn't fit into any other category, like weird liqueurs and things that weren't quite a gin and all that. We like to think of ourselves as the A-team. If nobody else can help you, hire our panel. And that was also really awesome, hanging out with everybody in the richest area of San Fran, across the bay in Marin County, Tiburon. How rich is Tiburon? Well, let me put it this way. Our great friend and the inventor of the Tommy's Margarita, Julio Bermejo, came to pick us up one night and take us out for a few drinks. And he said, Phil, just make sure you're out front of the hotel when I say I'm arriving, because I don't want to be the brown guy driving around Marin County. That's how rich it is. It's the place where I first saw a Lamborghini SUV. Right? That's what it is. So, ADI was awesome. April, I don't have a lot on the list for April. Right? There's really not a lot there. Except, me and the wife went down to judge the one and only TJ Lynch's Folly Beach Classic. So, TJ Lynch, to backtrack a little bit, has a stellar background. One of the people who popularized the pickleback, worked at many a fine place, including the Spotted Pig in New York, before opening the legendary Mother's Ruin in New York City. So for people from the UK, Mother's Ruin is our Happiness Forgets, or vice versa. I don't know which one opened first, and I'm not about to check. This isn't a news program, right? But Mother's Ruin has, over the course of its life, become the Balthazar for millennials, right? They do brunch. You can get a glass of wine, a martini, a mezcal, a dirtbag beer. They sell more Tecate than anywhere that isn't in Mexico. The food is amazing. Now they have branches in like Chicago and Nashville. So TJ, quite sensibly, has fucked off to Folly Beach. Where is Folly Beach? Folly Beach is a very kind of 1950s like beach, that's the clue, suburb of Charleston in South Carolina, the holy city itself, where half of all the Boeing 787 Dreamliners in the world are built. Fact, fans. And a couple of years ago, TJ started a bartending contest called the Folly Beach Classic, just to drum up a bit of business for his bar, Low Life. Excellent bar if you happen to be in the area. And me and the wife and a few other people would go down and judge it. It was always nice because it's a very realistic bartending competition. It includes speed rounds. It includes fuck-ups. So in every time a bartender goes up, they're going to make a certain amount of drinks, have banter with the judges, but the judges are given secret assignments. Like, you got to ask for 6 shots, or a bachelorette will burst in and say, "It's my birthday!" It's a lot of fun, but it's actually very realistic. And I love judging it every year. I don't remember much of what happened after the contest ended. And then it was May. What happened in May? Well, the New York Times dropped a fucking seismic bomb on everything we have been working so hard to achieve for the last 20 years by talking about the Dirty Shirley. Now, if you've never heard of a Dirty Shirley, what it is a Shirley Temple, that cocktail of grenadine and ginger ale that Shirley Temple herself apparently thought was shit and was invented at Chasen's in Beverly Hills, which, if I'm not mistaken, was also the home of the Flame of Love martini, which, the bartender flamed 4 orange peels into the glass before making the rest of the martini into it for Dean Martin. And that is what gave former Beverly Hills bartender Dale DeGroff the idea for adding a flamed orange peel to the Cosmopolitan. But anyway, the Dirty Shirley is nothing less than a Shirley Temple with vodka added. So the New York Times did this article. It's at the Dirty Shirley. Everyone's drinking the Dirty Shirley. Everyone's talking about it. And I read this article and I'm like, bullshit. I go out to all the finest bars of New York. I haven't seen a Dirty Shirley. But I'm old enough to know sometimes you need to gather some more information. So I'm fortunate enough that a 17-year-old lives in our apartment, and she happens to be my stepdaughter. So I said to her, do you ever hear of Dirty Shirley? And she's like, oh yeah, everyone's drinking them. So, whether this came from 17-year-olds or not, and I am never going to accuse my stepdaughter of drinking, or indeed of reading the New York Times, the Dirty Shirley is now a thing. There are fine, top-notch cocktail bars doing gourmet craft Dirty Shirleys. You can ask for it. There's canned ones, bottled ones. It's awful. And that brings me on to the next thing, which is ranch water. You never heard of ranch water? I never heard of ranch water. What the fuck is ranch water? Ranch water is essentially a tequila soda with maybe a bit of lime. And apparently it's a thing in Texas. Now, I've never really been to Texas, so saying it's a thing in Texas is like, oh, you don't know my girlfriend, she's from Canada, or, you know, we're very big in Belgium. But hilariously, in the rush for everybody making canned cocktails, there is a company that made ranch water, and it's not a spirit base, right? It's a fermented malt base. It's a fancy beer, like Smirnoff Ice is in the USA, right? It's kind of an understood thing. And there's a class action lawsuit against that poor prick right now because it's not actual tequila in it. And I'm like, I kind of get it and kind of not, right? I do have a bit of gossip to drop on you boys and ladies and girls and everyone in between, and God bless you all, however you identify. Campari bought Ameripicon in May. Now, unless you're very nerdy, you don't know what Ameripicon is, but if you're listening to this, you probably are nerdy. So you're either very nerdy or a bit of a dick. In early 2022, I happened to be talking to a good friend of mine, American, but he's nice, who makes Ameripicon in America. And what it was, he's got a distillery and he likes making weird old shit. And he found out the trademark had lapsed in America for Ameripicon. So, fine, he registered it. And he found an old recipe for Ameripicon and he made it. It's great stuff. He made it really good, gave me a bottle, loved it, drank it. Thank you. I saw him at the start of the year. By, let me see, late March, he told me that he'd been contacted by lawyers who were so high-powered he didn't even know who they were working for, who wished to buy the trademark. And he sold it to them for a massive sum. Like a sum that would allow you to buy a private jet, a second-hand one, but still a private jet. And even after the sale had closed, he didn't know who he was selling it to. And then about a month and a half later, it turned out it was Campari. So let's hope we get the ability to make Picon Bière, which is a beer with Ameripicon in it, soon again. Campari, we will see, was buying brands like a drunken sailor throughout 2022. So Campari, by the way, I'm going to hand it out now, wins our Drunken Sailor Award for 2022. Did I mention we're still looking for sponsors for this? Campari, call me, we'll talk. I was out and about quite a bit in May. I went to Cosmopolitan, Minnesota. Now, I had been there before for my own brand, Old Dutch Genever, the world's best Real Dutch Genever, the world's most awarded Real Dutch Genever. Accept no substitutes. Old Duff Genever. Available at all good stockists. So I had been there because I've got a great distributor there. Shout out to Libation Project and John Olson. And it is a blank slate. You go there and everyone is fucking nice and they're enthusiastic. The liquor stores are the size of football fields. Like France 44 might be the best liquor store outside any major city in America. It's massive. It's got like 3 tasting bars. It's got everything. And in Minnesota, in Minneapolis, St. Paul, the cities are so close. It's really, 2 cities, the Twin Cities, you can be a bartender, work 5 shifts, and live downtown in a nice place. No roommates, no 4-hour commute, none of that shit. It's got Palmer's, which is possibly the best dive bar in America, and all the cocktail bars there are absolutely killing it. The customers love it. The media love it. The bartenders love it. I mean, it's cold as fuck. It's basically Canada, right? It's basically, think of Canada. That's what it's like, right? But the bars, man, the bars, you know, Spoon and Stable, Suki and Mimi's, Meteor Bar. Oh my God. I also, incidentally, nearly went mad in Minneapolis. You'll like this story. So I was checked into the Moxie Hotel, downtown Moxie, very nice place. And the shower had a rain shower and a metal grill. Of course it did. Where else would the water go? And of course, Minneapolis is Princetown. The dear departed Prince, who I got to see live in concert when he was still off his head in County Cork in Ireland many, many moons ago. So I'm there, and I was brushing my teeth, and I turned the shower on, and then I stepped under the shower, and immediately I stepped under the shower, I heard dum, 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 dum. I heard the opening chords of Purple Rain. It was the weirdest thing. I stepped out from the shower, nothing. Back in the shower, dum, 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 dum. I was losing my mind. So that was the first day. I'm like, I don't have time for this. I ran out, had a full day, came back to the hotel, slept, got up the next morning, dum, 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 dum. Stepped out. Same thing. I'm like, I'm losing it by now. So I go downstairs and I start chatting to the thing is, they had a lady downstairs who did like reception and worked the bar and all that. So I'm chatting to her and I say, hey, Prince is pretty big around here. And she's like, oh yeah, no, we love Prince. You know, such a shame. What a loss. I'm like, yeah. So I said, do you do anything special for Prince in the rooms? You know, anything at all? And she looked at me, obviously, like the idiot I was, and said, no. And I'm like, in the shower? And she's like, what? And I'm like, oh well, I gotta go. And the next day I worked out it was because it was like this metal grate that resonated, and when the shower was running it just sounded normal, but as soon as you stood under the shower it began putting out these bass notes, and maybe I was projecting the Prince and all that kind of thing. By the way, I rewatched Purple Rain about a month ago, and it's fucking hilarious. It's also the most sexist movie that was ever made, but oh my God, what a great movie. So, that was not all of May. You're listening to the podcast of a traveling man. I went to Tel Aviv Cocktail Week. I adore Israel. I've been going there for more than 20 years. I used to go there scuba diving when I lived in Holland 2 decades ago. I've been there for, teaching and whatnot. And I now sell Old Duff Geneva over there. So it was a slam dunk for me to go to what I think was the first Tel Aviv Cocktail Week. I was the first person from the drinks industry to visit Israel since COVID kicked off. And nobody there gave a shit because Israel is awesome. They had enough people, enough fun, enough vibe to make Tel Aviv Cocktail Week one of the most awesome things. The Imperial Group, which includes Imperial Craft Cocktail Bar, the world's 50 best bars, La Otra, in the same building, their rum and mezcal and tequila bar, the amazing and massive bar that is also part of the group called Bushwick, which is going to be hilarious for anyone who lives in Brooklyn. Supported a lot of it, but most of the bars got on board. Gin Club Supreme, which is amazing. It's where I did a little seminar. Bellboy, which is, nightjar on steroids. The Hotel Montefiore, the Mother's Ruin, the Happiness Forgets, the Shady Pines of Tel Aviv is undoubtedly Tipamara. Tipamara was started by 2 bartenders who only had about, 40 shekels and a pair of big balls between them. And it is a great bartender's bar. I had the most fun of my life there. On the first night, we went to one of Bellboy's massive places full of sexy, beautiful people. And we were sitting at kind of like a table that was also half of another table. And the other half was this brilliant couple. The dude looked like a bouncer in a secondary industrial city in Russia. A man with a hard life who lived among tough men. And the lady with him was, age appropriate, very beautiful. Let's say, well preserved, all that kind of thing. And me and my two buddies, the importers distributors for Old Duff Geneva in Israel. By the way, if you need a craft spirits importer distributor in Israel, they are the best. Asaph and Duty at Free Spirits & Co. They've got Old Duff. They've got Appleton. They've got G-Vine Gin. They're the best. Anyway, we're there and we're kind of balling because we know the bartenders and stuff. We're getting drinks and stuff like that. We start chatting to these guys and the man says, "Hey, I like you." And a few minutes later, these shots turn up. Shots, right? And he raises the glass to us and we're like, "Thanks, man." And we ask the bartender, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, it's 40-year-old Glen Morangi." 4-0! And then the dude disappears for like half an hour, comes back. I sent over a round of Old Duff Geneva, which is a great deal for me. And I said to the bartender, is he gone? Is it? No. We didn't have any Krug champagne, so he went out to buy some himself. And I got chatting to this dude. I'm like, I'm curious. Like, how lucrative is it being a bartender in an industrial town in Russia? I didn't actually say that. He would have killed me. No, it turns out that dude, who I totally misjudged, was the Europe, Middle East, and Africa CEO for NVIDIA, the world's largest video chip producer. And that brings you on to the last thing. Whatever you think about Israel, if you haven't been there, you're probably wrong. But Tel Aviv, people don't worry about the war, the rockets, the West Bank, Palestine, all that kind of thing. They're the sweetest people there. Loads of Arabs working there. Most people get along. Tel Aviv is a tech town. And it's a tech town because of the army. Everyone has to do a couple of years in the army. 3 years if you're a male. 2 years if you're a female. Great. Lovely. But here's the thing. The Israeli military lead the world, I think, or they're very good at least, in cyber warfare. They can do shit nobody else can do. Right? They introduced a virus just by littering USB sticks around places that destroyed the uranium centrifuges in Iran. They got stuff you don't even know about, like Pegasus, which is a software that can hack into any phone, anytime, anywhere. So, if you have to do military service, you try to get into the cyber warfare division. And when you come out, you have skills that nobody else in the world has. So every tech company in the world is literally waiting outside when you finish military service to scoop you up. So it's kind of a tech town. It's like, San Fran without all the homeless people shitting in the streets. If you get a chance, go to Tel Aviv Cocktail Week next year. This year. If nothing else, I will buy you a drink. I also got down to Raleigh. Raleigh is also down south there. And it was for a client of mine. There's a friend who was introduced to me by Souther Teague of Memoria Margot, Speakeasy Podcast, Heritage Radio Network, subscribe and all that. And they have asked me to create a gin and a spiced rum, which, as we speak, is about 45 days away from launching. But it was my first trip down there. I have been down there. I am great friends with Gary Crunkleton of the Crunkleton in Chapel Hill. Amazing guy, amazing place. He's since expanded. He's got 3 or 4 outlets now. The people who hired me, Kevin Barrett and Drew Schenk, own the Dram and Draft chain. I think they had 4 or 5 in May when they hired me. They now have 7 or 8. And we are days away from launching Moonbird Gin and Goat's Spiced Rum. And a little diversion here. What it is, you probably have heard of NFTs. Now, if you don't understand NFTs or if you hate them, direct your ignorance or hatred elsewhere. I am not that person. But they are massive. They've gone up, they've gone down. Things go into fashion, out of fashion. There's a huge community around each collection of NFTs, right? These digital pieces of art. There's a very famous one called Moonbirds. Moonbirds are, of course, owls. And the Moonbird collection, when you buy one, and I think they cost, at their peak, $130,000 each, you got the IP rights. So Drew bought one, my client, and he said, well, we could create a gin. So we've made a gin. It's awesome, by the way. Also made at the Herman Janssen Distillery in Holland, which is why I've been going there so often. And another collection is called Goats. And Drew bought a goat and got the IP rights. So we were making what I think, modestly, I don't want to oversell it, the best spiced rum that the world has ever seen. And they'll be launching very, very soon. It's been an incredible journey. I'll probably talk about it in more depth in another podcast. And we'll take you through everything, the ups and downs, things you've got to worry about, the bullshit you don't even think about. But I went down to Raleigh, and we did sort of like an event at one of Drew's places, and he's got a mailing list. He says, hey, we're having an event. You know, there's going to be a buffet and a talk and a tasting and cocktails. And I went along, and a lot of cocktail friends of mine turned up, like Gary Crunkleton and all that. But a whole boatload of regular tourists, local people. Like, we're talking 100 or more. And they bought a ticket for like, I don't know, 30 or 40 bucks. They got a couple of cocktails and, frankly, an amazing buffet. But that doesn't happen in asshole cities like New York and London. It was so amazing. You know, I think the South is somewhere to look at, whether we're talking about Charleston or Nashville, whether we're talking about Atlanta or something. And in the bigger picture, obviously the secondary cities are having their moments in the sun. All right. On to... Wait, have I done everything? Yeah, we did everything. June. In June, we saw the launch of the 50 best bars, the Americas, right? Which covers everything from Canada down to Antarctica. Now, the 50 Best Bars organization obviously launched as part of the 50 Best Restaurants. And first they did 50 Best Bars, then they made it 100, then they did Asia. Now we have the Americas. It's going to be more and more and more of them, right? And this one was wild. Oh my God. For a week. And it's also connected to something else that happened in June, which was Bar Convent Brooklyn. You know, they kind of, I don't know if they really coordinated it, but the dates matched up. For about a week, New York City was New Orleans during Tales of the Cocktail. Every bar had a pop-up. Several bars I know had 2 pop-ups a day. They had an afternoon pop-up and an evening pop-up. It was just a little bit insane. Everybody had been locked up for far too much. If you were in London that week, in June, you undoubtedly had fairly shitty cocktails, or the bartender stole like fuck, because everybody who could wangle it from London was in New York, right? New York became a suburb of London, even more so than it normally is. There was loads of great events, right? It was absolutely fantastic. You know, the list was read out and all that kind of thing. There was huge representation from Caribbean, South American, Latin American, Americas. And some of the people on the list obviously shouldn't be there, right? I'm thinking of one place in particular on an isolated island. I'm like, how many judges went there? I know that bar. That bar, it is steeped in history. It does not deserve to be on that list. It deserves recognition, but not that list, right? We need to understand that if we are to grow as an industry, the 50 best bars list isn't for us. It's for consumers so they can make an informed choice. And they know, oh, well, if I go to a 50 best bar, it's going to be of this standard. And if the standard is that, if it goes from the Connaught in London to a place where you're the 900th tourist and are treated like that, it needs to be fixed. But oh my God, the love around the whole event and everything. And that kind of shimmied seamlessly into BC Brooklyn, which was bigger and better than ever. They had expanded. They had a new location, which was... There's not actually that many locations in and around New York that can handle events of different sizes. Because we tend to go from a 4,000 person event to a 50,000 person event space. There's nothing in between. But the new place was great. Everyone seemed to like it. The seminars went over well. But a lot of the action was the events. Like, it was a wild, amazing event sponsored by Michter's Whiskey and Siete Misterios at Barely Disfigured in Brooklyn, where they had they had the 8, 9, 10 maybe top bartenders of Four Seasons bars around the world. Hong Kong, Florence, Puerto Rico, everywhere, making cocktails at bar stations inside and outside. It was amazing. So I didn't stay home. I saw all of that stuff. Then I went down and I spoke at Barra Mexico. Barra Mexico is the Mexican bar show. It was founded by somebody I've known for a very long time, Ara Carvalho, who has lived in Amsterdam for even longer than I ever did, and managed to learn less Dutch than I ever did too, and her colleague Paula Garcia. It is a remarkable show. It's essentially not just a Mexican bar show. It kind of counts for the Caribbean and South and Latin America as well. They even have travel duty-free, travel retail people exhibiting at it. It's a great show. It's great seminars. And since last year, it has moved to the beautiful city San Miguel de Allende, which is a couple of hours outside Mexico City. It's called, I believe, one of the necklace cities. These like beautiful ancient cities that form a necklace around maybe Mexico City. I told you, we don't research this stuff here. But it's utterly gorgeous. It's like Antigua, Guatemala, or Alfama in Lisbon. You know, perfectly preserved city. And, you know, outside it, about, you know, I don't know, 20-minute drive, there was this huge space, and that's where we did it. We had the seminars, so much mezcal, so much raicilla, so much sotol, so much tequila. I mean, tequila was almost on the down foot. Oh my God, what's the name of the amazing experience? Not Clase Azul. No, Casa Dragones. They took over a whole space. There was swimming pools, DJs, food. It was one of the most amazing luxury experiences that I've ever seen, the Casa Dragones presence at Barra Mexico. And all the seminars went well. We went out each evening. There was parties and whatnot. And then me and Remy Savage of London's Bar with Shapes for a Name wrapped up our seminars, and we were both going to be picked up and driven back to Mexico City because it was Saturday, right? And we had early flights, him back to London, me back to New York on Sunday, right? So we were going to sleep at a hotel in Mexico City on Saturday night and fly out early Sunday morning. And the drive should have been 2 hours, but it was 6. So we get in the car. It was a van, a nice, comfortable van. And God bless them, the Michter's Whiskey and Siete Misterios people had loaded me up with some of their bottle cocktails before I left the bar show. It's an important point. So we basically got on the highway and stopped. And the driver says, something's up. So 45 minutes goes by, he comes back and he's like, there's been a horrible accident. And I'm like, how horrible is horrible? And he's like, 4 people are dead. We didn't move for about 4 hours. You know, me and Remy are best buddies, like we were before. We finished all the cocktails. He had a good sleep. And 6 hours later, we rolled into Mexico City. It was funny in the beginning. We'd had all these plans. Oh, we're gonna go to this bar. Eventually, we got to the hotel. It was like 10:30 at night. It's like, fuck it. That was a bit of a bummer, but the bar show was excellent. If you are filling your calendar for this year, I advise Barra Mexico, and it might be in June again. Let's hope. However, I got back from Barra Mexico, and then I left right away. 24 hours after my plane landed in New York, I jetted out with wife to Lisbon in Portugal. We had decided to start experimenting with living abroad. And I've been to Lisbon many, many times, but Mrs. Duff has not. And an old friend of more than 20 years, Manuel Barrera, who owns Global Wine Merchants, an import and distribution company in Canada, he is Portuguese, and he had bought a building a few years ago. And the building is, there's 2 floors of apartments with a roof terrace, and there's a tiny little space where you could fit a bar, and he built a bar in there. A bar that fits 8 people, called Ulysses Lisbon. And I had visited it before, and it's awesome, because Manuel has an incredible collection of ancient liquor, and he kind of loves being a bartender. He loves asking people questions and coming up with something tailor-made. But during all the nonsense of COVID, obviously, they closed down and reopened. He switched the model. Now, Ulysses, you make a reservation on Instagram for like 2 to 4 people. Hour and a half, 2 hours. You come in, it's just either you 2 or you 4, or it might be you 2 and 2 other people. And in this tiny space, you get a completely handcrafted experience. He could open 28 hours a day. And he is hidden away on a laneway, Rua de Regueiro, in Alfama, which is the oldest part of Lisbon. Lisbon had a massive earthquake or a fire, or an earthquake and then a fire, 9 billion years ago. And it was all destroyed. And Alfama is the only bit that remained. So it's legit 600 years old. It's also bizarrely got a cruise ship dock, and it's the only place where cruise ships dock that I've ever seen that isn't an utter shithole. Right? It's so nice. So he agreed to rent us the apartment upstairs, and we embarked on a month, 5 weeks of living in Lisbon, and it was amazing. Oh my God. You've got the culture. You've got the bars. You've got Red Frog, Monkey Mash. You've got new bars. Shout out to Alf and Marta from Quattro Teste. New, excellent cocktail bar in Lisbon. Shout out to the Onda Cocktail Room from Peter O'Connor, who used to work with my wife Elaine in Diageo. And he said one day, fuck this for a game of soldiers, and buggered off to Lisbon, like many Irish people before him, unfortunately. And in a weekend, found a site, signed a lease, and opened it. On the cocktail room is spectacular. And if you haven't been to the Chinese Pavilion in Lisbon, you're missing out as well. It's just an amazing place. The people are nice. You go out for dinner. You have cocktails, appetizer, main course, dessert, bottle of wine, Portuguese brandy afterwards. And for 2 people in Lisbon, the capital city where they rip you off, it's like €45, which is $45. Amazing. All right. Well, that brings us into July. And in July, it would appear that fuck all happened. Except, of course, Tales of the Cocktail. That little festival you might have heard of. So Tales came back. And it was always going to change a lot. So what had happened this year, Tales of the Cocktail Festival down in New Orleans, largest cocktail festival in the world, 21 years old now. It relocated to the Ritz-Carlton on Canal Street. Now, previously, it had always been hosted at either the Hotel Monteleone or the Royal Sonesta, both of which are deep in the French Quarter. Now, I don't know the boundaries of the French Quarter, but the Ritz-Carlton is either outside them or right on the edge. And it's back of house systems, because it was only turned into a hotel a couple of decades ago. Previously, it was a department store. Are amazing. The Tales of the Cocktail apprentices love this new place. But it's a bit weird. The other two hotels had big, massive bars right as you walked in, steeped in history. The Carousel Bar at the Hotel Monteleone, whatever the name of the bar was at the Sonesta. And this does not. It does actually have a bar. I know people who went to Tales of the Cocktail all week and didn't know that the host hotel actually had a bar. It was actually upstairs. And everybody was so happy to be back. It seemed to be quite busy. There was definite evidence of massive staff shortages throughout New Orleans, because places that would previously be open 7 days a week, lunch till deep in the night, it was very hard to find a place that was open for lunch. Even hot places that get busy, that have constant business, like Coops, right? If you know New Orleans, you know Coops. Coops closed 2 days during Tales of the Cocktail Week. Tales of the Cocktail Week in New Orleans is the highest grossing week for bars and restaurants in New Orleans. And they closed. They didn't want to close. They don't have staff. That's what it is. And it's the same throughout America and generally throughout the world. So good feedback. You know, seminar rooms are smaller. Everyone seems happy. One thing that's very strange is that Tales of the Cocktail used to start on Wednesday. So everyone would come down Tuesday. Then they started organizing more events on Tuesday so people would come down on Monday. But it was always bookended by the awards. And the Tales of the Cocktail Awards were always on Saturday night in a big venue. And everyone put on their ball gowns and their evening gloves and their cummerbunds and all that crap. And that was it. And then Sunday, you would nurse your hangover at Pig and Punch. And then you would go to the airport and your flight would be delayed because there's always hurricanes and storms in New Orleans in July. That's why the hotels are cheap, and that's why Tales was held there. Now, Tales started on Monday and ended on Thursday. So after the awards were held on Thursday, that meant at the Pig and Punch on Friday and all that, everybody was kind of walking around a bit dazed, like, wait, is it Sunday here now? Very odd. It's going to take a lot of getting used to, and it might just be the awards are really fucking expensive. They always lost $130,000 a year. Saturday night banqueting, inviting everybody, inviting all the caps. They don't do that anymore, apparently. Some of the best events I went to at Tales of the Cocktail were Paul Gustings at Arnaud's. Paul is a legend in New Orleans bartending, a Dutch guy who's been away so long and drunk so much he can't even speak Dutch anymore. Legendary bartender, has worked everywhere. He did a guest bartending shift at Arnaud's in the French 75 bar, and it was a piece of cake for him. He leaned over and said, hey, these young kids, they've got no idea how to make punch. So all he did was premix punch and pour it for people. And it was one of the best events you could ever see. The tribute to Sasha Petrasky, the dear departed founder of Milk and Honey, was held at the Southern Food and Wine Beverage Museum, which is also the home of the Museum of the American Cocktail. And Doug from Fourth Row Films had put together a movie of all the outtakes from when he ever filmed Sasha. And it was beautiful and tear-jerking and heartwarming and everything all at once. And another excellent event was from Pernod Ricard, which sponsored getting the band back together, which was reuniting all the Nomad bartenders. So if you don't know, the epical Nomad Hotel in New York City closed again during COVID, maybe not due to COVID, who knows. And that led to a diaspora of all its many bartenders, like 40 bartenders in total probably, who went around New York, across America, across the world, and opened bars and bar programs. Much as has happened, incidentally, in London with the Savoy, right? When it closed, they all went out. So they got back every Nomad bartender, recreated the Nomad. They had the bars, they had the cocktails. It was a very joyful event, especially if you know anyone from the Nomad. One thing that raises a question for everyone in this industry is, what the fuck happened to Absolute Elix? Now, I know a little bit about this. I want to go deeper into it at some time in the future. But let's just say this. Nobody ever threw a party. Ever. Like absolute elix. Like Miranda Dixon, it's, global head of brand, as I'm sure that's accurate enough. But just to give you a bellwether, they would throw the most amazing 3-day events during Tales of the Cocktails. They would take over a whole block of, one time the Audubon cottages, where you'd walk in and there'd be like a pool with copper beach balls and like multiple women dressed as mermaids with mermaid tails in the pool. There'd be like bars with Leo Robotchek, Monica Berg, Toby Cicchini just bartending. They'd have Hollywood stylists there to cut your hair or do your nails anytime you like. Like, money, no option, all the way. Before the awards, they'd have a rent the runway room where anyone could go in and you could like get a gown or a dress or something like that. It was, if you got to spend money, they did it right. And at Tales, it was a single afternoon, 3 or 4 hours. It was nice. It was very well executed by everybody. But the Absolute Elix saga has not yet concluded. On to August. Nothing happens in August. Except, of course, my old friend George Bagos got his brand, 3-cent soda, bought by Coca-Cola Hellenic for a very healthy sum. This is something I feel a little connected to because I know George, great bartender. One year he came to Tales of the Cocktail and there was a seminar put on that I do remember seeing and sending out to the committees to approve. And they did approve it. And it was by Darcy O'Neill, who is a scientist, chemist from Canada, who has done us an immense service by researching all the history of sodas and soda fountains. He wrote the best-selling book for its category, Fix the Pumps, about the history of soda fountains. I strongly suggest you buy it right now on Kindle. And Darcy was talking about, how they used to make old sodas. And George went to the seminar and he's like, wow, that's an opportunity. He went back to Greece and founded 3-cent soda. You have seen them at every bar show. Their sodas are excellent. Their Paloma is amazing. Even their fizzy water, their soda is really good. So they were the target of a massive acquisition by the company that owns the bottling rights for Coca-Cola in Greece and a lot of the areas around there. So well done, George and team, and hat tip to Darcy O'Neill, who's now a farmer in Canada. So in August, I also buggered off to the Perfect Serve bar show in Amsterdam. Although I think it was in September. August, September. We're going into September anyway. I can't quite remember. It was packed. So this is the bar show in Amsterdam, founded by Timo Janse, originally with other partners. Now it's Timo and his business partner Tess Postumus. It is a remarkable bar show because it's not just for Amsterdam and the Benelux. So many drinks companies who used to be based in England and any drinks company that wants to operate in Europe bases itself in Amsterdam. Everyone speaks English. It's inexpensive. You've got the second biggest harbor in the entire world in Rotterdam. And you're right next. You can literally drive to France and Germany and Luxembourg and Belgium. It's a really good bar show. So it was packed. I was there representing Old Duff Geneva with my excellent Dutch distributor, A Brand New Day, their craft spirits division, Red Carpet, with the ambassadors Ciro Adriano Di Giorgio and, at the time, Mike Courthout, who has since left us, but now he works for Woodford, still in the same family. We love you, Mike. And there is a new Mike in the form of Timo Stamerdijk. Timo, look forward to hanging out with you. So I hung out a little longer in Amsterdam, and I was at the Perfect Serve bar show, and one of the organizers came up and said to me, "Hey Phil, can you help us out?" I'm like, "What?" He said, "Well, we have a brand ambassador of the year competition but only 4 people entered, and one of them hasn't turned up. Do you mind doing it? You just got to like talk a little, make a cocktail. I'm like, sure, fine, anything to help out. So I went up there. It was great fun. All the other people were great. There was my friend Jonathan from Bitter Sling Bitters. Some new friends of mine. There was an American lady who makes great organic infused vodkas. There was another gentleman who represents Leonista, which is agave spirits from South Africa. Leonista is very good, actually. And it turns out I won. So you are listening to the podcast of the Netherlands' best brand ambassador of 2022. The fact that I live thousands of miles away in New York apparently doesn't matter. Okay, fine. But I stayed on a little longer in Amsterdam. I had some stuff to do. And I nipped up to Copenhagen to do the official in-person launch of Old Duff Geneva, which we did at 11:05. 11:05 was one of the seminal cocktail bars of the Copenhagen cocktail scene. Morton was there. The dearly beloved and much missed Gromit Edwardson was the main man at 11:05. So to do the launch of Old Duff Geneva there was very special. And then to go and visit all the cool and great new bars. And obviously wind up at K-Bar of Curson Home and of Balderdash of my good friend Jeffrey Canelau. So the Copenhagen bar scene is popping. And even though I basically only had 36 hours there, I can't wait to come back. Then I nip back to Amsterdam because it was a brilliant event in the Hilton in Amsterdam Airport. It's called Ginius, Ginius, and it's kind of a celebration of all gin and Geneva spirits held in the Hilton Amsterdam Airport. And it's kind of like an after-work event, and it's a cross between a drinking party and a trade show. So all the brands could come there, put up their stands. You can go there, get a drink, buy a token, go to the main bar, see Francesco, see Andrea, and myself, Timo Janse, some other people did little talks, little seminars. Most people were more interested in the drinks than us. Timo's talk was really good. It was actually about the history of bar snacks, and he blew me away. I had no idea about most of this stuff. Timo is a good guy. And I was speaking about, history of gin and Geneva. It was an amazing event by Hilton, and I hope that they roll it out to all their different branches all across the world. And it was really easy. I kind of walked out of there, went to the hotel, slept, got up the next morning, flew home. So, on to September. Sad month for the English monarchy. The Queen died. What was she? 94, 96? I mean, however you feel about the monarchy, and I'm Irish, right? Horrendous things were done to Ireland. You have to respect somebody who spent their entire life in service. Like, she was cutting ribbons a week before she died. She worked right up until the end. That plunged the whole country into mourning, kind of end of an era stuff. As usual, it led to people doing stupid stuff. Like, there's a very famous soccer footballer in England, I think it was, and he said, just ordered a takeaway, threw it in the bin. When takeaway meaning delivery food for American listeners. Food was delivered, looked at it, threw it in the bin. Wasn't respectful to Her Majesty. Yes, because Her Majesty would have felt disrespected by you eating a chicken tikka masala that you got on Uber Eats. All right, buddy, whatever. In September, the drinks companies pulled out their checkbooks. Campari, already winner of the Philip Duff Show Drunken Sailor Award for 2022, bought Vermouth del Professore. Vermouth del Professore, if you don't know it, is a range of mega legit vermouths. How legit? They're the Old Duff Genevers of vermouth, founded in Italy by the group of chaps behind the Jerry Thomas Project cocktail bar in Rome, including my old mate Leonardo Leucci. They're really some of the most authentic and beautifully packaged vermouths you can ever get. The range also includes 2 gins and some other products that they've made, a Barolo Canato. I think it's a sensible acquisition, by Campari because the company that Del Professore used to produce can scale. Because the main reason to buy a little brand, if you're a big company, is, well, we're a big company. We have, 9,000 salespeople, so we can just tell all of them, they'll sell it. But then you need enough product. So sometimes the major worry is if you buy a little brand, can they make enough? Del Professore can make enough. So I really hope that you'll see Del Professore vermouths and indeed gins and Barolo Canato on every back bar coming along. Interesting, not quite an acquisition. The beer company Coors and the wine and brandy company Gallo bought apparently what's called a significant interest in Tequila Comos. So Tequila Comos is founded by the guy who created and later sold Sombra Mezcal. Sombra Mezcal is an excellent mezcal. Comos comes in a very striking ceramic blue bottle, and it also costs more than the space shuttle. It's very, very expensive. And it is described as tequila with a Mediterranean twist. And I've tasted it, read the website and all that. I have no idea what the Mediterranean twist is. And by the way, what is the fucking link between Mexico and the Mediterranean? If you know, answers on a postcard to the Philip Duff Show. But they've made a bit of a gamble on Comos. Let's hope it works out. I mean, it wouldn't be the first expensive tequila to do well. So we wish them well. And then Brown-Forman, the Jack Daniels people, bought Gin Mare, having built on the acquisition of Ford's Gin. Right? Ford's Gin was probably feeling pretty fucking special for a while at Brown-Forman as the only gin. Now they bought Gin Mare. Gin Mare was founded by the company in Spain that used to distribute G-Vine Gin. They built up G-Vine Gin very expertly, and then they created Gin Mare, which is a wonderful, we're saying that word again, Mediterranean gin. They promoted the shit out of it all around Europe. They launched it in many countries, also the USA. They had a bartender contest where you got to go to a finals in Ibiza. All good. So now I think within Brown-Forman, Gin Mare is the super premium and Ford's is the premium. So the question is, what are Brown-Forman going to buy next? All right. On to OND, and the O of OND is, of course, October. And in October, there was lots of stuff in the consumer sphere. First of all, well-known African-American Elon Musk bought social media network Twitter, and everyone lost their shit. Now, if you're a bartender, bar owner, manager, if you work as a salesman or a CEO, you're probably thinking, what's the fuss? You don't use Twitter. You've never used Twitter. But Twitter over-indexes in a couple of different areas. Academic people are on Twitter. The media are on Twitter, especially journalists and writers. And politicians are on Twitter. That's why it's important. In terms of user numbers, it doesn't really matter at all. Everybody lost their shit. So many people were like, I'm leaving Twitter. I'm going on Mastodon. Oh my God, he's ruined it. He's letting the racists back on. All this kind of thing. And he also, Musk, fired 75% of the staff. Now, 3 months later, the site seems to be running just like it always did. So, interesting. And speaking of social media, it brings us on to the next two consumer things that happened in October. I don't watch Game of Thrones. I've got a life. Nor do I watch its spin-off, House of the Dragon or something like that. But there was a clip where two of the stars of House of the Dragon were chatting about cocktails. And one of them says, so what you like then? And the other one goes, Negroni Spagliato. And then leans over and goes, with Prosecco in it. And it's kind of endearing. Because Spagliato already means with Prosecco in it. And then she leans over and says, with Prosecco in it. It's like calling koi carp. Koi means carp in Japanese. If you say koi carp, you're saying carp. Right? Negroni Spagliato. And this became a thing. I think it was also because of how she pronounced it. She sounded a bit Northern English, like Spagliato. with Prosecco in it. You know, it was kind of a nice thing. It was sweet. And everybody, by the way, forgot what the other person said, which was stunning. I like a martini. I have two of them to get me pissed. Like, there wasn't an uptick in martinis, but martinis are popular anyway. So the spagliato goes there. Everyone starts making spagliato to can. You know, and all the bartenders are like, oh, really? Now you want a spagliato? No, after I've been busting my ass for 12 years. Now you want a spagliato? Here's your spagliato, bitch. Something along those lines. But something else that happened was the espresso martini got a lot of ink. It got a lot of press. Now, here's the weird thing. I had been in Minneapolis talking about cocktails people make around the world with Old Duff Geneva, and I talked about a brilliant one, which was a espresso martini that doesn't use espresso, made by Arlene Wong in Hong Kong when she worked at the famous and excellent Pontiac Bar. So she was a brand ambassador for Mr. Black, the excellent coffee liqueur that was also during 2022 acquired by Diageo, or maybe it was 2021, who cares? And she worked for a distributor that also distributed Old Duff Geneva. So she made an espresso martini with Old Duff Geneva, Mr. Black, Bianco vermouth, bit of sugar, boom. Gorgeous, looks great, tastes delicious, good, you know, cost of goods, liquor cost, GP. And I was telling this to all the sales reps in Minneapolis, and one of them said, oh, thank God. Everyone hates the espresso martini. You've got one that doesn't have espresso in it. And I'm like, what? And the rep says, well, everyone hates making the coffee for an espresso martini. First time I ever heard of it. Fast forward 7 months later, the espresso martini gets a lot of ink in October, and everyone starts writing about how bars hate it. It's become basic. It's like the Cosmo, right? And it's one of those things, if you're not set up for it, you probably do hate it. If you are set up for it, you probably love it. But oh my God, is there a cocktail on your menu that's more profitable than espresso martini? Oh my God, vodka, coffee liqueur, and a bit of coffee? Boom, can't lose. And let's go into the bar world, because a lot of stuff happened there. Boom. Where to start? Well, let's talk about the world's 50 best bars. The world's 50 best bars announcements, which is 100 bars, was held in Barcelona for the first time. It had previously always been held in London. And why not? Why not move it around? Right? Why not do things in different places? And there's a lot of criticism of all the lists, not just the world's 50 best bars. There will be criticisms of the Pinnacle Guide. There'll be criticisms of Michelin and Galt Mio and all this sort of thing. And one of them is that you can only compete if you have a lot of money. And that's true. You either need a lot of money or a lot of time. And it comes down to the same thing, because there's only 24 hours in a day. If you're doing a lot of work you're not getting paid for in order to promote yourself and get on World's 50 Best Bars, you're either going to kill yourself or go broke. All right? And this World's 50 Best Bars was held in Barcelona. The number one bar was Paradiso in Barcelona with Giacomo and his crew, and the secret speakeasy within a speakeasy, Macallan Room. And there's no reason why this wouldn't be a serious contender for number one any year on the list, right? It's a fine bar. There can't really be any question about that. But with all these lists, you set it up as an organizer, you try to get impartial judges, but you get them to work for free, and you tally up the results, and the results are the results. You can only affect, as an organizer, you can only affect the results by either cheating or by getting lots of judges from different regions. Like, if you suddenly add a lot of judges from Latin and South America, which happened with the America's 50 Best Bars, well, guess what? You're going to get lots of bars from those regions. Maybe that's the idea. That makes an awful lot of sense. But sometimes the results just surprise you, right? There weren't a lot of massive surprises at the World's 50 Best Bars. Actually, I remember looking at the list. I'm very glad for Paradiso. But there was a big surprise right afterwards. So let's go back in time a few years ago. And a guy, I believe his family were Iranian. They moved to Sweden. He then moved to Barcelona. Mo Aliaf started a bar called Two Schmucks in Barcelona with a business partner. And they built it up. And Mo, by his own admission, loves bartending, loves fun, loves wildness. But he also loves taking photos and videos and photo editing and color correcting and, you know, the right hashtag, putting on that he really likes it. He doesn't view it as a chore. He really enjoys it. And Two Schmucks, if you've been following their Instagram, Schmuck or Die, on Instagram for the last few years, they're one of those ones. I think it's very amusing. Every post they do is about how wild and cool and crazy they are. Like, oh my God, we've got like women with tattoos. Look, I'm drinking from a bottle. Woo, we're getting wrecked. It's going to be lit. But you know that every photo was taken like 17 times, looked at, judged, evaluated, color corrected, cropped. You know, everyone debated the hashtags. Like, they're selling spontaneity in a very decidedly non-spontaneous way. But hey, everyone's got to make a fucking dollar, right? Screw that shit. Anyway, a week or two after the world's 50 best bars, where Two Schmucks had grown into a mini empire of like 3, 4, was it even 5 bars? There was Two Schmucks, Schmuck or Die. I don't know. Loads of bars. There was this very long Instagram post by Mo saying that he had been kicked out by a nasty, evil investor with Russian links, and that the whole team had walked out with him, which they did, right? And that, it was awful, and they screwed him over. And in his Instagram video, the only thing he said that wasn't positive about essentially himself was, I didn't read the contract, my bad. And like, the dude's an adult. A few months later, Mo did a great interview with the Bartender at Large podcast, Eric Castro. That's Eric Midlife Crisis Castro, which you should really listen to, and you should listen to most of Eric's Bartender at Large podcasts because they're excellent, and Eric's a great guy. And they dove all into it, and what it turns out is Mo went in, him and his buddy, they took in a third partner who was more experienced, who had money. They worked for sweat equity. They didn't get things written down. That was okay. Then an investor comes in, and the investor wanted to grow it, wanted to make a chain of bars and then flip it and sell it to a company. That's the goal in this business, by the way. The goal is to have a chain of bars and sell it and flip it to a big company and take the money and then go and snort cocaine off a hooker's ass on a yacht in the Caribbean. That's the goal, right? The guys at Be It One did it in England. So in the podcast, Mo, he discloses he went through, he was drinking too much, he was doing substances too much, he wasn't, probably responding to emails and stuff like that. So they pushed him out. You know what? This isn't a story of somebody being fucked by an evil investor. I get why Mo made the Instagram post, right? It preserves his brand. It's the brand above all. The brand. I get it. Everyone's going to make a buck. But some old-fashioned people like me also care about the facts. So, Two Schmucks still exists. The group still exists in Spain. The bars seem to be busy. I think they're doing well. Mo himself has resurrected Two Schmucks. They're going to do a residency. Coincidence, second mention of a Moxie, at the Moxie in Miami, sponsored by Ford's Gin. So, Mo, if you're listening, we wish you well. And if you happen to hear weird noises in the shower, it's not you. It's just that grill at the end of the shower. If you stand under the shower, it sounds like the opening chords of Purple Rain, and if you don't, it doesn't. So I guess don't stand under the shower. It was also Bar Convent Berlin, the mothership in Berlin this year, and October saw BCB become officially the largest bar show by a very large margin in the world. You could sprint round every stand 3 days in a row and you would not see them all. It was massive. It was mega. It is a colossus. You love it, you hate it. I get it. Maybe you liked it when it was like 40 stands in one single room. And hey, I did too. I was there. I have been to every single BCB in Germany that has ever been. I've spoken at every single one. I've been to every single BC Brooklyn. I've been to one BC Sao Paulo, and I'll probably go to BC Singapore this year when it happens as well. But BCB, the mothership, is a mother now. Everyone was really happy. It was really busy. The stands were really busy. The main stage, they put it in a sex dungeon. I really mean that. You had to go through this underground neon lit thing to get to it. It was the hardest thing in the world to find. So the main stage, I feel, needs to be really main. I did a great seminar with the strong and gracious Kenta Goto of Bargoto and Bargoto Niban. We actually reprised a seminar we had done online during lockdown, which was mixing cocktails with sake and shochu, because Kenta, the clever devil, has actually come up with a totally new paradigm, a template, if you will, for making cocktails with shochu, because shochu is typically lower in alcohol. It's very high in flavor, but it's lower in alcohol. It's sometimes only 25% alcohol. And he started with the classic template for making a sour that has been promulgated by Dale DeGroff, and he adjusted it. So he talked about it. The seminar was packed out. There weren't even enough headsets for everybody. And me and Kenta decided that we're going to do it again. We're going to record it on Zoom, me and him, and chat a bit more and put it out on the Philip Duff Show with video on YouTube, rip it as a podcast, all that kind of thing. So that'll be something that we're doing in the future. I was also very happy to finally get hired by an Irish company. Board Bia, the Irish export agency, hired me to help do some stuff at BCB that included hanging around the stall. We did a Irish spirits you don't know tasting and seminar, which was great. It was actually the very first seminar of BCB, and I was kind of a bit worried that no one would come, but in the end we filled the room and we got to taste amazing stuff like Boan whiskey finished in PX sherry casks. We tasted the Five Farms cream liqueur, which is a really amazing cream liqueur. If you've never had it, you should try and seek it out. And Blood Monkey Gin from my mate Jason Kidd, which is a Geneva-inspired Irish gin. And we also hosted a brilliant seminar, cocktails, and gourmet dinner at a Michelin restaurant, which was a lot of fun, right? And rounding off October, Brown Foreman, obviously neck and neck with Campari for the Philip Duff Show Drunken Sailor Award, bought Diplomatico rum. They bought Diplomatico rum. Somewhat of a surprise. They paid a decent price for it. The multiple was good. They're now deep in the rum game. So the question is now, what rum will they buy after Diplomatico? They're clearly setting up a gin hub with Fords and Gin Mare. So what rum is next for Brown Foreman? And then it was November. Everybody's mad busy in November, but you've done all your deals. All the brand managers are deep pulling their hair out in brand planning for the next year. So all you can do is go out to get bars, buy drinks, high five bartenders, take them out for lunch if they have time. Pernod Ricard bought Código Tequila, most famous for a rosé tequila, and it's apparently a celebrity brand. So I'm going to come back to this at the end of this podcast because I'm doing a rundown of the celebrity booze brands. But yeah, bit of a surprise. And I nipped over to Cognac in France. It was a great event organised by my old friend Jean-Sébastien Robiquet, owner of Maison Vilvert, which owns and created the brands June Liqueur, G-Vine, La Cantini, Vermouth, Excelia Tequila. He also created and to this day makes and bottles all the Ciroc vodka in the world. The brand itself, of course, is owned by Diageo. And what it was, we've been talking for a long time about creating a sort of a memorial to our dear friend Gary Gaz Regan, who came to Cognac many, many times. He was a sort of competitor coach in charge of vibes for the G-Vine Gin Connoisseur program. He visited Cognac separately. He and John Sebastian and other people judged Diageo World Class. So a load of us got together. It was myself, John Sebastian, Salvatore Calabresi, Peter Dorelli, Dale DeGroff, Hidetsugu Ueno from Japan. And we kind of planned what we would do. But in between, we did a lot of very fun things. We recreated Gary's invention of the finger-stirred Negroni, which happened for the first time when he was with me on a G-Vine trip in Cognac. So we all stirred Negronis and we drank them, and we got to visit Cognac Gros Parrain, which has been bought by Maison Vilvert, John Sebastian's company, where we sampled some cognacs from 1931, which is truly, truly stunning. And then December was upon us, and again, mad busy for everybody. There was an article that drew quite a lot of discussion from Nick Morgan, a friend of the show. Nick is a doctor, Nick Morgan actually, an historian who was hired by Diageo about 900 years ago when they were interested in launching their range of single malt whiskies to the world. Now, you might think single malts have always been for sale. They have not. Until the 1980s, basically nobody drank single malt whiskey outside Scotland, and not many people drank it in there. Yes, Glenfiddich was selling single malt from 1965 or 67, sure, but they weren't selling much. All of Scotch whiskey was a blend. So Diageo got into the game. They hired Nick to bring up the research and the history and all that kind of thing, and he worked for Diageo for a very long time. And then his time came to an end. He quit, he got pension, and now he can write controversial articles. And he did. He wrote about how whiskey writers are too nice. And what he wrote is true for this entire industry. There are no critical spirits writers. Just as there are basically no critical whiskey writers. Right? We don't have enough. And we miss them. If you look at wine, if you look at beer, there are people who write about wine or beer who can be critical and say, this new release is not good. It's not up to standard. It's all this kind of thing. We don't have them in spirits. In spirits, the only criticism you'll see will be, it's kind of punching down criticism. Like, oh, Fireball is shit. Yeah, no, Fireball's not shit. It is what it is. Right? It's for a particular market. No. Is it for the Connaught? No. Right? No. But no one dares to say, hey, you know, this whiskey from Vermont, the stuff they're actually making themselves is fucking awful. It is, by the way. No one says that. We also lack, to be brutally honest bar reviews. Right? Because not every bar can be great. And if you only review the great bars, what service are you doing to the consumer? We want consumers drinking better. A consumer reads an article about whiskey or spirits. All they want to know is what's good, what do I avoid? That's what they want to know. It's what they need to know. They get it from a beer article. They get it from a wine article. They don't get it from spirits articles. Because two things happen. Either people don't say Spirit X is shit because they don't say anything at all about it, or they say it's good. And that's both a problem. It's a problem for everyone. Right? Everyone needs to know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. And we need to get this knowledge out. So Nick got a ton of backlash from people. And at the same time, it's very hard, right? If you want access to talk to a distiller, if you want to be able to visit a distillery, you know, you got to get along with the PR people. That's fair. And if they send you a bottle, it's like, okay, great. Then I don't need to spend $30 or $50 or $100 or $200 buying the bottle. But it does build up a relationship. Of course it does. That's the whole point why they send you a bottle. That's why they hire a PR agency. How do we fix this? Well, that's the subject of another podcast. But it was an interesting article, and I urge you to look it up. That's Nicholas Morgan. I think it's on Master of Malt. You can find him on Twitter. We definitely need more people who speak their mind like Nick. And two more. acquisitions. Diageo bought the Texas whiskey distillery Balcones. Balcones was one of the first, or not the first, Texas distilleries. Certainly one of the first I ever heard about making single malt whiskey. But I'm going to say publicly, fuck Balcones, because they treated their founder, Chip Tate, very poorly. He was a distiller. He literally built distills, and he was pushed out by those people. No bad behavior or anything. It was purely a money thing. They really fucked him over. So fuck Balcones. Diageo, we love you. Hope you get over this. We wish you well. And I think we're getting close to the end of the year. So we're going to wrap up with something that came in just today. Breaking news on the Philip Duff Show. It was a roundup of the best-selling celebrity brews. And it was published by Drizzly. Drizzly is an app on a website that lets you order alcohol in America. Maybe they've expanded. I don't know. And they usually promise, at least here in New York, they'll deliver within an hour, right? So what it is, they don't just make money by selling booze. They collect the data. Just the way Amazon collects data on you, they see when you log in, what you click on, what you look at. You put it in your basket. You take it out of your basket. You leave it there. Do you need a code to buy? The data is the new gold, and Drizzly collects it. So this was their clickbait, we need PR article, and it was the best-selling celebrity alcohols on Drizzly. Do you want to hear what they are? It's depressing, so I hope you have a drink to hand. Number 1, Casamigos. Number 2, Ciroc Vodka. Number 3, Terramana Tequila. Number 4, 818 Tequila. Number 5, our old friend, Código Tequila. Number 6, Aviation Gin. And number 7, rounding it out, Proper 12 Irish Whiskey. So let's start with Casamigos. Look, you can hate on Casamigos. Diageo did not pay $1 billion. They paid about 600 and a bonus over 10 years of 400 if they hit sales targets. They paid 600 million cash. It was a multiple of 18 times, which is totally normal. And Casamigos was turning over about $40 million a year. It was a real business. It wasn't like nothing. It wasn't like they just turned up and handed George Clooney a bag with $1 billion in it, right? And Casamigos, it's that sweet cacao, chocolatey tequila. People fucking love it. Let them love it. It's fine. If you like Casa Noble, you like Casamigos. The Casamigos Mezcal is the worst thing that's ever been put in a bottle, by the way. So if you like people, do not let them drink Casamigos Mezcal. Ciroc is very interesting. It's the only one on the list where the celebrity is no longer relevant. With all due respect to P. Diddy, Puffy, Sean Combs, whatever he's called these days, he does not have the profile he once had. He basically has no profile at all. It's been, 10, 15 years since Ciroc was put under his guardianship. His shares have been... What it was, he was promised half the profits for 10 years. Not ownership of the brand. Half the profits for 10 years. That happened. He held up his end of the bargain. He made a load of money. Diageo made a load of money. It's now 100% Diageo owned. So calling it a celebrity brand now is interesting, and it is a case study as to how do celebrity brands age. If Casamigos and Código and what are in the springtime, well, Ciroc's in the autumn or the winter. Where's it go? Maybe it's going to always be awesome. We'll see. Terramana, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. It's very interesting that he has done, Dwayne Johnson, in terms of all the photo ops and stuff, all the things that other people get accused of cultural appropriation for, but because he kind of looks a bit ambiguously everything, by his own admission, he gets away with it. Like the big photo with everyone in front of the distillery when they don't own the distillery, and photoshopping in the name Terramana. Yeah, sure. 818 Tequila is from one of the Kardashians. Is it Kendall Jenner? Maybe one of them. I don't know. They have partnered with one of the most respected people in the agave business, in my opinion, which is Lou Bank, who runs the Sacred Agave project to actually become real and authentic and stuff like that. So I'm not going to shit on them totally, but I will a bit. Código which was bought by Pernod Ricard back in November. You might not have heard of it. I don't think it's big outside the USA. Famous for a rosé tequila. But apparently it's owned by a country and western music star called George Strait. So unless he's had a cameo as an actor in the TV show Yellowstone, I have no idea who this is, and neither do you either. But yeah, good, I guess. I mean, if it's owned by a celebrity you've never heard of, is it a celebrity brand? If a tree falls in a forest, who fucking knows? Aviation Gin, Ryan Reynolds. I mean, who doesn't like Ryan Reynolds? How sad and shriveled and wizened is your heart if you don't like Ryan Reynolds? And if you don't love him after watching the incredible movie Waiting, well, you have no place in the audience of this podcast. Aviation Gin, doing very well. Good gin. Ironically, was started with the help of another Ryan Megarian, who had sold out of that before, 2 acquisitions before Ryan Reynolds came down, everyone's favourite Canadian actor who apparently sleeps with Blake Lively. So obviously one more reason to respect Ryan Reynolds. And rounding it out, well-known pugilist Conor McGregor's brand, which thank God he no longer is a part of, Proper 12, now owned fully by the Cuervo Beckman family Proximo vehicle. Proper 12 is blended whiskey made in the Bushmills distillery in Ireland. And I have to say, of all the products on here, pound for pound, in terms of value, Proper 12 is indisputably the worst of these celebrity-owned brands. It's not even, relatively speaking, good value for money. For $1 or $2 less, you can actually get better stuff. The packaging is horrendous. The packaging looks like what you would design if Conor McGregor had spent an hour punching you in the head and then put you in front of a laptop that only had Word on it. That's the label you would make. But hey, obviously, all the best for Proximo, good friends of the show, with great brands of other whiskies under their aegis, like Great Jones, Black Dirt, and Stranahan. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I promised you a long show. This is it. We're coming up to the 2-hour mark. I've got to pee. Is the end of the Philip Duff Show Roundup of 2022. I think you'll agree that it has been a wild ride. I haven't even mentioned climate change because I don't give a shit. And if you like this, like, subscribe, share, follow me on Elon Musk's Twitter, which is apparently now a hellhole, at Philip Duff. That's PHILIPDUFF. That's PHILIPDUFF on Twitter. On Instagram, it's exactly the same, but there is an S for Stephen in between the Philip and the Duff. So it's PHILIPSDUFF on Instagram, and everywhere else I am Philip Duff with a single L because we're better. On LinkedIn, on Facebook, not on TikTok because I'm an adult, but I'll probably have to go there eventually. Look out for Old Duff Geneva in all the best bars. If you happen to have an Old Duff Geneva drink on your menu or you order one, please upload your photo, hashtag it, all that kind of thing. Let me know in the comments to direct messages or merely by cancelling me what you like and what you don't like. And I will be back at some indeterminate point in the future to do yet another podcast, YouTube video, all that sort of thing. Will it be with David Gluckman? Will it be with Kenta Gatto? Will it just be me? Who knows? But take care of yourself. If it's dry January, stay dry. You've only got a couple of days to go. And if it's not dry January, my hat's off to you. Please have a large glass of something, maybe Geneva, possibly whiskey. Why not fucking gin? Gin is great on its own. And a nice cold beer next to it. And I'll catch you later. Cheers.